Are you looking for something affordable, unique, and fun to give away in your merch orders or at your shows? Look no further. Hit me up today to order 1-inch buttons for your band, label, or other project. High quality metal pinback buttons for your friends and fans' battle jackets, messenger bags, and guitar straps. $40 for 100 buttons, shipping included inside the US. Message me on IG at Everything Remade to get started. Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you about our Patreon page at patreon.com/humanmachine, where you can go to sign up and support the show, get music sneak peeks, read zines, and so much more. That's patreon.com/humanmachine. And now, I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing I Write Intros, Not Tragedies by Versus the City, featuring my new pal, Jade, on guitar and sometimes clean vocals. The song comes from their debut LP on Potato Cat Records, which you can find on Bandcamp now.
I grew up near Pittsburgh, and it was the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. My parents used to drag me out to it a lot when I was like really little, and kind of lit a fire for me to pick up an instrument in the first place. So like in Pennsylvania, they started band in fifth grade, and when I moved to Michigan, they started it. No, they started band in fourth grade or third, something like that. I forget the exact. I'm sorry if I'm rambling. This is gonna.
No, you're okay. This is
Um,
gonna get into rambling for sure.
um, yeah. So it was an elementary school, and then when we moved to Michigan, it started middle school, and I've been begging my parents to let me play an instrument for a solid like 2-3 years at that point. And they finally got sick and tired of it, so I started with low brass. And again, as you mentioned, it's like that connection from music, and it's something that not even something that you do, but it's that point where it becomes so ingrained as part of you. Where it was growing up with all of that, but then it was the artist that made me pick up a bass guitar in the first place. Because that was like I had a guitar before I had a bass, but when I picked up a bass, it was like, oh, this is it. And for me, it was Tony Campos from Static X and Matt Freeman from Rancid. Hearing the Maxwell Murder bass solo for the first time was like, oh, I need to do that. This is what I need to do with the rest of my life.
Okay. Yeah, Matt Freeman, like the first time when I was, like I'm assuming I'm a little bit older than you, and when I was in high school, and the first time I heard Operation Ivy, and I was like, I did not know a fucking guitar could do that, let alone bass. For punk music at that time, it was unprecedented. And it was really like, yeah, holy shit. So I could see that for sure. But you said you already had a guitar at that point, like that was just, you said you were like, you were hungry to like learn about music and be involved, but guitar just didn't come across the same way as you. Did you find it like you were like, this is too complicated, or what was the like disconnect there before you got your bass?
I think the disconnect was, so before that I was playing low brass. I was a trombone and euphonium player.
Okay.
Um, and it was something I really enjoyed doing through middle school and high school, but it was something I wanted to continue on. And I knew that, like, brass instruments are a lot harder to keep up on and can be consistent with. And so I picked up a guitar. I was listening to, I mean, this was late 90s, so gosh, tell me how old I am.
Oh, okay. We might be around the same
So,
age then. Okay.
um, but it was listening to a lot, like obviously ska was a big thing then. I was listening to a lot of ska, and it was like, well, this is something I can do to continue with my love of music, maybe dabble in some bands and that sort of stuff. But it was bass when it was, so it's not like that it was like less complicated. Obviously, like my favorite artist for bass, are ones where they are doing what the guitar is doing and then some.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but it's like went from the, this is fun, this is something I can continue to do to keep with my love of music, to this is something I need to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah. I wonder too, like, how do you feel about, like, okay, because like I got this idea, and this is sort of this is dependent on the project, right? But I have this idea as well where, like, you know, bass is it's there's some there's something about a guitar where you can play a guitar part in a song that doesn't have anything to do with the actual song. Like, and I do this all the time. Like, I'll have a guitar that's like, this is the song, and then the other guitar, like, when you listen to that by itself, you're like, this doesn't make any sense. And it's not even necessarily a lead, it could be just a contrasting rhythm or whatever. So I wonder, like, if there was, like, even though, like you're saying, like Matt Freeman, like, this is taking over the song in a lot of cases, there's still something about the bass that is like the anchor for the song, where you're like, well, yeah, I just get this.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that even comes through with my songwriting because, like, I'm the guitar player for this for Versus of the City. I'm also like pretty much the sole songwriter. Like the band, as it's like the writing goes, is I write and record all of the instrumentation. My vocalist Nick writes all of the lyrics, and it's one of those things where we're very collaborative with it too. Where it's like we sit down and it's like I can explain to him what I'm feeling when I'm working on the song, and he listens to like the bits and pieces of it, and he's like, "Okay, I understand now. Let me work something out," and then he'll bring it to the table, and it just. Um, but especially with that bass, that feeling that um, with how it, like I feel like a lot of those bass lines are written, you always come back to root. You're always on the downbeat with uh, the chord changes and that sort of thing. And if you actually like listen to my leads, I'm doing bass lines on guitar. I'm not playing guitar leads. It's that connection to the core.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And like I don't know. Um I s- I, I have, like, I have a real, like, none of this makes sense, like, as far as like my musical, chain. Like, I I really wanted to be a drummer, and and I no, my parents were like, you can't have drums, you can't. And they would rent me a clarinet, they would rent me a violin. So I played this stuff in school. Then eventually, my dad's friend, who actually is my like one of my humble brags, my dad's friend was a drummer and lent me a snare drum so I could be in the school band. And he actually is one of the engineers on the Breeders album that has Cannonball on it. And so this is like, I hear Cannonball and I'm like, I think of my dad's friend Joe, which is wild. But anyway, so like, he lent me this drum, and this is, another old head shit, where it's like, you're walking to school and it's freezing out, and this drum weighed, I had to have it in the case because it was like probably a really fucking nice snare. I don't remember, I had to have it in the case, and I'm walking to school, and I got like no gloves or the shittiest gloves, and it's freezing, and this thing weighs like fourth of my body weight, you know, and I was just like, yeah, I can't, no, I don't fucking care. Like, I'm not doing this, you know. So I either went back to violin or something else, or I just didn't play. I can't remember, but and then later it was like all about guitar, because like I like that's like drums like they always click to me, like that this is like the backbone of the song, but like for whatever reason, I was like, the guitar player writes the song, obviously, because that's especially in punk for the most part, you know, at that time, especially in metal, Metallica and stuff. Even though you had Cliff Burton, which is, you know, that's another story right there. But like you, you're just like, yeah, the song is more or less centered around the guitar. So I thought, if I'm gonna write songs, it's got to be guitar, and so it's like weird how, you know, you if you write all the parts and you write all the songs, I'm sure you can relate to this. You oscillate between almost these like uh like aspects of your personality or something to like channel your creativity in this specific way for that thing. So like I'm always like, yeah, when it comes to guitar, like I'm just fucking around. Like I don't even think of the guitar like as like this is the song. Like even though in the end the guitar, one of the guitars is going to be central. It's going to be where like things either originate or they camp at, or whatever, however you want to look at that. Um, but like I don't know, that's a whole other thing. But like in like I don't think about songs like I might have parts and I'm like, oh, I think about songs like almost in a story kind of way, and not in a like character plot whatever kind of way, but like in a, I can see like this needs to go up here and it needs to come down there and it needs to finish out in this way or that way, and I don't know. So I just like, yeah, I relate to how it's like, you know, th- these different things are kind of like uh you're playing them, but you're also you're playing, like, and it's an aspect of play that I don't think that like I I would like to talk about that more, you know, not necessarily now, we can talk about something else, but that's something I'm always thinking about, you know. I don't know if that makes sense, but I
Yeah, it kind of does. So it's like that interplay, that almost internal role play, that internal conversation, that internal monologue with different aspects of yourself. Um, I feel like it's that's for me at least. It happens simultaneously and concurrently while I'm during the writing process. Because I'll have like a bug in my brain about like one core idea I want to do, and it's usually something weird where it's like, yeah, having like the guitar player doing like this, but then the bass doing like a counter line that's going like the opposite direction, and then my the drums will just be jumping and being like, hey, guess what? I know exactly where to go with that, and it's like this internal conversation that you're having with yourself. So I really like how you described it as um, like different aspects of your personality or different, yeah, it's like that, like when you're thinking of like a story and it's creating that like internal conversation almost,
mm-hmm.
and I haven't thought of it like that. It almost just feels like this comes together for me, and it's like, no, wait, that's exactly how it happens.
Yeah, is that usually kind of how like it is that usually how these things form for you, like these like nuggets or whatever that are in conversation with one another, as opposed to like you just grab the guitar and then you're screwing around and then, oh, that's pretty cool, or is it like a little bit of that and a little bit of that?
For the most part, it's like not really to pick up the guitar and screw around a little bit. It is, I'll get like, this bug in the back of my head, like that has to be itched. So it might be like 2 in the morning. I'm just kind of like ready to sleep. And then it's like, eyes bolt open, and it's like, oh, I need to pick up my guitar now because I just had the weirdest phrase pop into my head.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, then one of the other instruments will jump into it while I'm trying to riff it out, and then another one will jump in. It's like my brain's kind of like it's having a conversation for me
Mm-hmm.
with the
Mm-hmm.
guitar in my hand.
Yeah, I have a lot of I definitely have a lot of voice memos and stuff that like um I have to like make sense of the next day, or like I might not even remember that I did something the next day, but then it'll be 2 days later and I'm like, oh, didn't I like wake up, or didn't I just like roll over and record something? And you go back to it, and a maybe 50% of the time you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Or maybe the other 50% of the time, your original thought of how this was going to go was is lost to you, but you're able to like have a dialogue with it in a new way that maybe is even better. You don't you don't know. I mean, certainly sometimes everybody has that thing where they didn't pick up their phone or their guitar, and they just thought like, "Oh, I'll remember that." And it's always like you everybody has like for sure their white whale where they're like, "Oh, remember that thing I thought of that was so great that I didn't write down, or I didn't open up the DAW and I didn't whatever." And like, I mean, like I don't know how many times I've done that where it's like I didn't get that idea down, and like I just want to say for the record, like it wasn't that good. Like whoever's listening to this, like it wasn't that good. Don't worry about it. Like it feels like it was, but like you actually probably had that same idea like three other times and you did execute it, or you will in the future. But like, yeah, I don't know. I'm saying that like for my own uh my own like sense of like giving myself a break, but also like I feel like that's just kind of the way it is sometimes. Like you do have to strike while the iron is hot or whatever, but you also like if you like you're gonna have more ideas, I guess, is the thing too, um yeah. But I think that's really like do you always go straight to the guitar, or do you have like a shorthand where you can like write like actually write music, or like a different form of like tab, or is it always like straight to the guitar?
While I'm fleshing stuff out, it's depending on like where the idea is coming from. It's so I have a couple instruments. So I have my house guitar and I have my house bass. Not just like the ones that are in my studio, but like the ones that are just out in the common area that are usually just like leaning against the couch. So I can just grab whatever one is speaking to me at that time, whichever one of those voices that like wants to come through first. And um, yeah, just so I just pick up one of those. And usually at that point, when I'm starting to figure things out, it's I'm gonna start focusing on a key that it's in, and then I just kind of like you know chord charts to figure out the song, and then usually record a demo, um, just so I just like on a voice memo, so I know kind of where I'm going with it rhythmically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now that's because there have been a few songs that which I can get into this more. Basically, like I started working with ideas for what eventually would be Versus the City years ago, but I had a hard drive failure and lost everything. And I only had like recordings of it, but didn't have any of like the chord charts, didn't have any tabs, didn't have the stems. So I couldn't, I was basically listening to what I had done and then trying to reverse engineer what I was playing,
Okay.
um, because all of that was gone.
Were Are you not like you have difficulty like just like by ear, or it was just like the recordings weren't that good, or it was a little column A and a little column B?
Things were very bad because they were just recorded on my phone and
Oh,
then just
right.
mixed in like an audio app, and of course, I run heavy distortion. but then also I'm like kind of running like weird chords where you're not picking up some of the nuance, especially with a phone recording. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I can tell it's not a fifth chord, it's not a power chord, but it's doing something else, and I'm not sure where my hands exactly were placed to get that
Yeah.
weird resonance or that weird chime.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's sometimes like there. I mean, and there. Uh, I'm just like letting my like like lack of knowledge about like recording and stuff right out there, which is fine with me. Like I've been doing it for a long time, but I've never like I don't know. For me, it's a means to an end. Like I've never like been like I'm gonna get really good at recording. Like I'm just like I do this because I like to write songs way more than I can afford to record songs. So that's like that's my thing, right? So like sometimes I've heard the term for this before, but I don't remember what it is. But sometimes there's that thing where it's like you have this guitar over here doing this, and you have this guitar over here doing this, and they were recorded separately, and like so there's no like back and forth like between like two mics or anything, which could that could be one thing, but there's not that. But there's just something happens like when these two things are happening concurrently in the recording where other sounds just become at play. And I don't remember what that's called, but it's like that's where like yeah, it's understandable like where you're like especially if you're like oh yeah like well like I can tell this root is here and this other root I don't even know if that's like a thing, but like I like to do like I mean I told Dave Norman my like when Dave Norman first started playing guitar, he was like what would you tell somebody who's just starting? And I was just like you can just put your finger on one string, and if you find a spot where you can hit a bunch of strings, but your finger is only on one string, like that's fucking cool. And like so you do create these things where it's like well the root could you could pick that as the root note or you could pick that as the root note. And then like by the time you do that on two guitars, by the time you do throw another finger on another string where it's like not necessarily even part of the same traditional chord structure or whatever, then you're like dabbling in a lot of things where you're like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. Like I'm hearing something cool and that's awesome, but like I don't know how to play this anymore, like so it makes sense. It's just like yeah, sometimes like you know later on you if you're relearning stuff or you lost something and you're trying to you just yeah you make that compromise, right? You're like well that's as close as I can get, then we'll go from there.
Calling out, if anyone will listen. Is this the part, or is there something
you lost a bunch of stuff, and that's kind of where you were at.
And it was like kind of having to rebuild it from there. And you know, I ended up shelving the project for years at that point. Stuff came up, and the when I went back to it, it was like a lot of it I didn't know how to play it. So I was kind of like reteaching myself, but at the same time, it ended up being rewriting everything that I had worked on. And yeah, forget how we got on that subject, but yeah, it was did end up being a lot of like rewriting stuff or using it as a platform where it was like, this sounds like crap, but you know, the idea of where I'm going is cool, so I might keep, you know, the song structure, or you know, keep the right key signature because I know where I'm going here, but it's like the whole thing just sounded like garbage, so I'm just going to start from scratch and just take one or two elements that I liked. And you know, that was like two songs I want to say that I kept onto the album that way. But yeah.
Yeah, it's I've had a couple like I've been I was using this same computer since 2010 when I first started recording my own bands, and and it was it had such a small like hard drive like that I was always having to take projects and put them onto thumb drives. And so I had one project where like it was like I and then like also my recording computer didn't have internet access. So like I'd have to put them on this thumb drive, and then to put them on Bandcamp or whatever, I had to take them upstairs into the computer upstairs and put them on Bandcamp. And so like this one time I was in the middle of all this whatever. I was probably just like taking a podcast episode or something and putting it on the computer upstairs, and I had like no room on my computer, so I had this whole project on this thumb drive, and one of my kids like just like accidentally like kicked the thumb drive and like didn't completely snap it off in the computer, but just like bent it to where like couldn't read the thumb drive anymore. And I had a whole like EP that was on there that was like almost finished except for vocals, and I was like, holy shit. And like and in the end, like I actually just like ended up just like I was able to like so I had already had the bass parts like onto the recording, and like I said, I was doing vocals, but I still had the bass parts separate, and I had these stems from when I sent the bass player just the guitars and the drums, and I was like, well, I can put those bass parts on these stems with the guitars and the drums, which luckily I had mixed like pretty well. And then I can do the vocals, or I can explain to everybody how we have to start over. And I was like, fuck. Well, let's see what it sounds like. Let's go and cut a song on vocals, and let's put the bass in there, and let's see what I can do to this one track that has excuse me, the both sets of guitars and the whole drums on it. And let's see how I can get this to sound. Can I get it to sound like close to like an actual proper recording? And I was like, you know, it was like one of those movie moments where it's like, this is so dumb, it just might work, you know, and it did work, and I did that with this one project, and I listened to it and I'm like, I could have like I could have put the bass down a little more. That's the only thing. But it's like at the same time, like with if I would have put the bass down a little more so you could hear the guitars a little better, then like one drum in particular would have been way too loud. So it was like a compromise, right? And like you're saying, where you had these songs and you got to the point where you compromised, but you said you only ended up using a couple of them anyway. Is that the ones that the two songs that made it like from the demo version to the actual album as well? The Dallas Green and the uh I forget the other one that made it from the demo to the um
Yeah. Well, I pull up my Bandcamp.
there was one where it was like on the album version it has a much longer song title, but you can tell it's like the same title because like the first bit of it is the same. um but yeah, that was another thing I was gonna ask. And i can i can I can edit this out later if this is something you don't want to talk about, but I noticed on the demo you have a different name on there. And I was curious to ask about this because I also like have another name on a bunch of my releases. And like I don't know if this is a thing where you're like, "Oh, I'm going to change that. I just haven't changed that yet." Or if you have a different perspective on it to where you're like, "No, I'm going to keep that way because of this." Like I have gone back on some releases and changed them, and on some I haven't. And I'm always like, does it matter? Does it matter to me? Like I don't know what other people think about it. I don't care, you know. But I was wondering what your perspective on that was.
Oh, so this is, yeah. Um,
And I can just
so
cut all this if you
no, it's okay. It's
okay.
okay. You might have to edit out the gaps and stuff like that.
No, it's
Uh, Yes, to go to the previous part, the ones that were on the demo that I were actually from the original thing that ended up being completely rewritten, chord keys changed, that sort of stuff like that, and song structure changed was Diana, it's 11:30 a.m. and Look After My Heart, I've Left It With You. Um, but those ended up basically being completely rewritten from the early demos to the demo version that came out that September.
mm-hmm.
Um, and to answer your question about like so basically that demo came out in September of 2023. I came out to myself in November. So it was one of those things too of I also know I've done music long enough and have a long enough history of stuff that I kind of can't hide from that. It sucks contacting venues and other bands when it's like, hey, can I get a show? Can you like put me on the show? I really want to play this kind of thing, and getting the whole response of like, who are you? And I basically have to detonate myself in order for me to get a response from them. Um,
Because they already know you by some other or
yeah, so it was one of those things of
because
like,
you'd played there before or whatever.
yeah, it's one of those things
Right,
like, I
right.
become like such good friends with either the booking folks, the venue, the other bands,
Sure.
and then just kind of disappeared. And then Jade appeared, and they're like, who the fuck's Jade? You
Yeah.
know? So, I didn't really make a big to do about it because I'm really non-ceremonious about a lot of things. I'm the kind of person where it's like, even, you know, like gifts for someone, it's like not on a holiday, it's not on a birthday, it's not wrapped up in wrapping paper. It's literally just like, hey, I thought you might like this, so I got this for you, and just straight up hand it to them.
Sure.
Um, so I kind of did the same thing with my own gender, where it was like the whole came out to myself, started making changes within myself, and like this tight core group who were kind of like my support network, and then um, yeah, kind of just didn't tell anyone else. It's like they're gonna figure it out one
Yeah.
way or the other.
Yeah. I
And
think with me it's like it's yeah, I mean, it I don't know. Um like I know there's like there's like a whole thing with Discogs where like I have this huge thing where it's like one the name I use now, which is like my name, gets rerouted to the to my birth name, my government name, whatever, however you want to put it, right? Um, and that like really offended Aster, which I thought was so cute and nice. Like she was like, excuse me, she was like, no, I'm gonna get a hold of them, and she like went to bat, and I was like, it's fine, and um, bless her, but like, yeah, it's this thing with me really where it's just like, I'm like, yeah, I'm not like deeply offended by that, but also I don't want to see it. So like that's my thing. Like if you see it on a release somewhere, like it's like, yeah, that's there. Chances are if I see it, like if I go to the Bandcamp page, like just because I'm like, oh, when did that record come out or whatever, and I see that name, like I'm changing it. That's like a me thing though. Um, like at the same time, anybody who knows my government name or whatever, like do not fucking call me that. Like, um, but like, yeah, that's just something that I've always, because some people are like, well, at the time I did that recording, I was going by this, and I think that's like understandable, and everything. Um, and also like I I don't have to apologize to my like for myself where I'm saying like, yeah, like at the time that I recorded that album, like I was like going by a different name, but like if I want to change it now, then I'll change it now, like so I don't know, I was just curious like what your perspective was, and it kind of sounds like you're just like, you'll figure it out kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and it's like I've had enough previous, releases through various other projects where there's enough music out there with my dead name on it that it's like even hunting some of it down to get the name credit changed is like just this is gonna make me sound lazy. It's too much of a pain in the ass for me
Yeah, no,
to
yeah, it's all it, it, every part, to me, every part of like uh each individual's like transition journey, or however you want to put it, is like sort of like how important is this for me to like take the time to do this thing or that thing or the other thing, so it's like I totally understand where it's just like, yeah, I just don't care about that, and like I mean, like voice training, a lot of that's really important to a lot of people. And my personal thing is like, no, the thing is like I was doing a voice that entire other time. So I'm not going to do one now. Like I'm just going to let it happen, And like I think sometimes when I hear like other trans women that are like they have really great beautiful voices, like I do get a little jealous, but like at the same time like it's that whole thing, right? It's like what's important enough for you to spend all this time on, and like I'm always like I get up and I do my stuff with my kids, and then it's like straight to work on something. So like I'm like I thought the other day to myself, I was like, um because I'm like really bad at makeup, but I thought the other day I was like, "Oh my god, you know what I want to start doing is I want to start giving myself freckles." Like that'd be so cute, right? And I was like, "Oh, I could probably do that. Like I could probably learn how to do that a little bit, and that wouldn't take too much time." But guess who hasn't started doing that yet? It's me, because every day, like I said, I get home from taking my kids to school or whatever, and then I'm printing something, or I'm like making a video to show Aster one of our songs or whatever, And yeah, I don't know. It's just like we all have those things where it's like this is a priority, this isn't. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, so as far as like the demo, so you have the demo and
Mhm.
you did everything on that. Like, and a couple of those songs made it to the LP. Um,
Yeah.
Now what? As far as the LP goes, like what when you went to record the LP, was the band a full band and you were playing shows and everything by that point, or like was the LP the like um the starting point for like the live band and et cetera, et cetera?
So we had already played a couple shows at that point. We were missing the final piece, which was our recent addition of our guitar player, Chris.
Okay.
Um, and Chris joined right before the album release, so his first show was the album release. Um, it's still one of those things of like it might just be like petty control or whatever. At least I had some bad experiences in previous bands where uh, I wasn't happy with how certain songs came out because it was like too many cooks in the kitchen. So the album is one, again, still self-recorded, and two, I'm still playing every single instrument.
Okay. Um, w- as far as the drums on the record go, was it programmed, or did you record the drums and you just like triggered them, or like what was the when you say like you recorded all the instruments, what was the situation with the drums on the album?
Yeah, so the drums are programmed.
Uh-huh.
So I suppose it's not like actually quote playing the instrument.
No, I think
Um,
either thing is, I have a couple tracks out there where there's some programmed drums. None like it's something I do with somebody else, but anyway, that wasn't my. It's just like they have a sound to them.
yeah,
And so I was asking
and
Aster about it, and she was like, "You know what? I don't know. I don't know if it's rude to ask." And I was like, "Well, it's my job to ask questions, so I'll ask the question." So yeah, do you start a lot of songs that way, like, or are all the songs more or less like, um, here's the outline of the guitars or the bass or whatever, or do you ever start songs like by like, oh, here's this would be some cool drums, let me see what I can do over it?
so there actually have been a few where it's like maybe not the drums themselves, just because I get like really particular and keep revisiting and revisiting and revisiting because I'm not a drummer, I'm
Mm-hmm.
a bass player primarily. Um, but it's uh, for me, it's like one of those things of like, oh, hey, it'd be cool as if like, I started off with like, just the drums doing this, and then it comes into this, and it's like, well, I have a riff that would actually work with that. So some of the ideas do actually authentically start with an idea for the drums, and then it kind of starts to flesh itself out as I start to understand how the different things I've been working on just magically start fitting together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's like I think the reason why I programmed the drums and why my recording setup for bass is so incredibly stupid is that I, coming from like low brass, coming from bass guitar, coming from rhythm sections, is I feel like a very bottom up mentality with music, where if you don't have solid drums that are on tempo, you don't have a good like low end rhythm section, you don't have good rhythm guitars attached to it, you don't have anything. You know, that it has to be the bass, which is solid drums. The next step, solid bass work with solid, tight, quality, good sound. And then you can just like layer, say, crap guitars on top of it, and it's going to sound good.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually like sometimes I don't even know if a record is good until I've like EQ'd the bass in properly. Like I'll have the track and I'll still not know. I'm like, I don't know if this is good. Then once you get the bass to sit in there the right way, then you're like, oh, I think this is good, you know? Um, but that makes me wonder like, is it you mentioned like control, and you mentioned like sort of there's an aspect sometimes where it's just like, too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing. Why did you not play bass in the band live? Since it's like more or less your your go-to
Right.
instrument.
Um, I would say there's two reasons for that one.
Mm-hmm.
One is some of the bass lines I can't play and sing at the same time.
Okay,
For
yeah.
this, um, the second one is as a bass player who switched to guitar, right? Um, I ended up working with and like for my own projects bands where I'm not going to be playing bass in. I intentionally kind of like surrounded myself with other bass players, ones who I thought were as good as me, if not better. And I was like, I'm going to keep you in my pocket. You know, I'm going to like, okay, example. If okay, sorry for going off on this tangent. My previous band was the melodic hardcore band Come Out Fighting. I was in the band for a decade, I think. We put out something like 4 albums and like two or three EPs during that period. And it was like 6, 7 years in, my guitar player got cancer. And the only one he trusted to play his guitar parts, which, I mean, to be fair, weren't that complicated, but the only one he trusted in that aspect was me. So I switched from bass to guitar, and then it was one of my friends who I trusted at that level. I walked up to him at a show. I remember it was in Wyandotte. His name's Dan, which if you look at who's in Versus the City, that name may sound familiar because he's the
Okay.
bass player for Versus the City too. And I just walked up to him. I'm like, "So Dan, what are you doing? Like what other bands are you in? Are you only in one right now?" And he's like, "Wow, you're trying to make it too?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You trying to make it a new project, Jade?" And I said, "No, I want you to play bass for Come Out Fighting because I had to switch to guitar." And he was kind of taken aback because it was like, "But what, you play bass?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but you're as good as me, and I want you. I don't want a bass player. I want you in this band." And so I think that was also the other aspect was being able to go to Dan and be like, "Hey, new band. It's me and Nick writing everything. I want a bass player, but I want a solid one. Um, do you want to maybe do this?"
Got the exercise because the city is haunted. Got the ambulance 'cause now we're bleeding out so fast. Thinking back on yesterday, don't know how it got this way. All I know is that my pain shaped me. Used to scream to communicate, thought it was the only way. Used to scream to be heard, thought it was the only way. You're the exorcist. It's time to face this wall. With a heart full of love and a voice like a hand grenade. It's time to face this wall. With a heart full of steel and a voice like a hand grenade. Waiting ain't gonna save our dream. Dredge the lake and dredge the sea. Brush your shoulders off and keep it clean. It's time to bring back all we knew when it meant so much.
Did it seem like when you asked Dan to be in the other band that was like what he was hoping for or something, that it was going to be a new thing that was like, but then it was like, oh, we're going to do this, and then later the other thing would come? Or
I think it was he didn't expect me to walk away from my main instrument
sure,
so quickly.
sure.
Um, and then also, when you trust someone to take your place, that I feel like there's got to be a lot of respect there because like starting a new project, new sound where you're developing something new is, it's easy. I feel
Yeah, it's
like
more
easier,
malleable or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
versus going and being like, "Hey, I was this instrument for this band. You're the only one who can take my place and make me feel comfortable with that continuing forward."
yeah. I I have I guess I have a lot of like, I'm not like like Coma Regalia, we started. I was the drummer, and I did vocals, and then I did that through three guitar players. We were just like mostly a two piece, and occasionally someone would come and play bass, and eventually like it was like it was it was like you said, it was like um yeah, somebody has to be better than me, you know, like, and it's weird because um I didn't feel like that would be that hard, you know, like I didn't feel like I'm not that great, so like anybody should just be able to come along and like handle this and you know whatever. And surely we were playing with a bunch of bands where any one of the drummers could have, but none of them lived near me, or none of them wanted to travel to where we were, or you know just the circumstances. And then it's like um almost like once I stopped playing drums in the band, it's almost just like we've played with a few different drummers, and like one, you know, we'll just play with we just played with my friend one time, and it was so different than playing with any of the other three or four people that we've played with. And it was just like I don't know, I felt a I felt a I was excited about like how like this was just a variation, you know, or this was a um I guess it's different because we have a lot of recordings, and they are of different they sound different from one another. People could argue that they're of different quality from one another or whatever. So there's less of a like with y'all, you hear this album, this is what you expect to happen. So that's like that would get in your head. But with me, it's almost just like, yeah, let's see what happens if somebody else does this. Like that'd be wild, wouldn't it? And and I don't know if that makes it seem like I'm not taking things as seriously, but it's it's just like I was talking about before. It's that sense of play. It's that sense of like, let's see what happens, you know, which is um that's one way you can take a project. And then there's the other way, which is like, you know, I want this to be a certain thing all the time, you know, which is like um I actually feel that way more about like Astor and I's project, Worn Through, where I'm like, I feel that way about that. I feel like I wrote a really good album, and like, I don't want to just do another thing that's like an EP that's like this is cool, but it doesn't. I don't know. Like that has to be a certain thing for me, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I love the fact that like you can do these things, and you can decide these things, what might feel like on a whim, you know. You can just be like your other band, you know, where you're just like, yeah, I was in this band for 10 years, and you know that could have probably felt like a very different thing, and you got different things out of that performance and being on stage with those people in that band, and now it's like something else. And I don't know, like I I I wish I had a band where like um I just got on stage and I was like more or less like a clown, you know? Like I wish I had a band like that. Like I do have projects like but it's not like a real band, you know, like Diona, like I could see that being like that. Like if there was a full band of Diona and I got on, like that would be just, I would just be a clown and it would be fun. And like I think it's amazing that like you can just decide that, and you can do all these different things with music, you know? I mean, I don't know. Um it's like that must be what it's like to a degree to like be an actor or something, and you just go and you just like you're like you're there in there somewhere, but you're putting this part of you out there that you don't always share with other people or whatever, and you're exercising this part of yourself, this aspect of play that's like, you know, um, you're given the freedom to do by music. You know, I don't know. Um, so we were talking about the demo before, and the demo came out in 2023.
Yeah.
So, like, you said there was a long time before the demo where you were more or less like recreating, that lost recording, these songs that you couldn't, like, you had lost the files for, and you couldn't necessarily recreate the same way. So, like, um between the demo and between now, like, was it was there a big period there where you were taking a lot of it, like, from scratch again and deciding what it should be at that point? Or was it just like other life things that were like happening that you're just like, you know we're going to do this in its own time? Like, what was the time between the demo and now? Was it just like the writing and things like that, or?
Yeah, there was a lot of like writing because it's like if you listen to the demo versus the album, you can definitely hear the bones are there. The bones are solid. Like I think I even straight up like in a few spots reused the drum tracks as they were. You know,
Oh,
just like
wow.
remix and but it's like there's been a lot of tweaks, a lot of little minor changes, little new lessons. You'll probably hear like vocals were completely redone. The final mix was completely redone on the couple tracks that I kept through. Um, and it was a lot of me figuring out where, like, letting what I'm writing become a thing of its own. That's why the stuff where it was previous to the demo that eventually became like rewritten and became part of the demo that was kept over from the old tracks, which like I said was only two of the tracks. Um, which even then one of them was completely rewritten from the bottom up. Like it had a different key, had a different tempo, had a different rhythm. It was a different song.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the previous existing stuff, because it was a journey. Um, where the original idea I had for what became Versus the City um, was going to be a power violence band,
Hmm.
uh, and it was going to be called Arm the Queers, and it would have been like, even though I wasn't out as trans yet, I was still like I've spent like the last 18 years as a trans rights activist, so it would have been like violently pro-trans, um, and I don't write power violence. That's the problem. So then it kind of evolved into me trying to force a Midwest emo, which is just still not me. And then it was kind of like leaning more into, I think I described the last time message I sent out about booking shows. I described our genre and again asked her kind of interacting with her kind of like really inspired this description as post hardcore slash false emo, which I think is like the most accurate description for what we do. Um, and it was like leaning into the melodic hardcore and post hardcore stuff that everything started to make sense and everything started to click. And then it was like recognizing what that is and like leaning into that. And then I actually started writing the more, in my opinion, the more interesting stuff. Um, because even with the demo is those tracks have been re-recorded like twice and then replaced. Like there is older versions of the demo that no longer exist because you can go through and replace tracks on Bandcamp,
Yeah.
um, which I've already done with a few of those tracks. Um, so even the demo is not the original demo.
Oh, wow.
Like it's on a hard drive
So
somewhere.
if somebody downloaded it that the day it dropped, and you're gonna have one of those LimeWire things where it's like, um, that's not the one that I have. Where did you get that one? And that kind of thing. Yeah, that's interesting. I've I've never done that, but it might be fun to do that just to mess around, just to just as a goof, like just. Eh. 'Cause I don't, you know, I don't think that you did it. Uh, you did it in a way to where you're satisfying yourself, like artistically, and I'm thinking of it in a way of, wow, that would be fun to do, just to be a shithead, like just to, because I really, there's in the '90s we had the bonus track on the CD. You make it, to where it's just you would never know it's there unless you're like the CD's still playing in your car, and then 5 minutes later, something scares the shit out of you. You're like, "Whoa! I didn't know there was another song on this." And I've always loved the idea of like just make a burner YouTube account and put one song on it and see if anybody ever finds it, or do this and see if anybody ever, so I'm just like thinking about the way that you could go into, like, your second release from 15 years ago and just change one track, to where it's just like I don't know, like some weird alternate version, and that's just me on the other end of my email account, waiting and waiting and waiting, and seeing if anyone ever emails you or messages you on Instagram being like, why the hell did you do that? um, but you're like, no, we just have better versions now. We're putting those there.
Yeah, and actually talking about the hidden track thing, I think that is one of those things that I think is a lost art that is a thing that I'm never going to let go of, and I will
Yeah,
hang on to the day I
because you
die.
because you do have one on, I believe it's, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but there's a spoiler about it on your Bandcamp page. So, like,
When I credit it's a cover, and I credit the
right,
band who
right,
wrote it.
right. It's like, look, like the and if you're just looking at the Bandcamp, and you read that, then you might be like, why the fuck is that there? But I remember someone told me about something else already, so I was like, oh yeah, that's right, that's the thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, like I I love that stuff. I I've got I've got a bunch of stuff that I actually won't talk about, but like I'm always like, yeah, um, like, what if you like what if you have an album that's like one sided, for example, but you actually put something on the other side and you just didn't tell anybody? What if you did this? What if you did that? What if there was like, you know, what if you made a package where like this CD came with another CD that you didn't tell anybody about, and they had to take the package apart to find the other CD, but they didn't know it was, they could just like, what's is this, is there something else in here? And they had to, but that's, I'm gonna cut that because that's actually my idea. No, I'm not gonna cut it. Like, somebody else beat me to it. Who cares? Somebody
I
else
was going to say,
probably has done it already.
yeah.
But
So with that, I'm uh, with Come Out Fighting. I actually ended up buying a CD duplicator. We had a CD printer, and we made our own discs and assembled them. Like, I bought the jewel case. I used to work in a print shop, so printing the inserts, all of that was done by me. And again, this is like that weird level of control. It's like even packaging has to be just right, otherwise I'm not happy with it. So even with that, I've like, obviously asked her to put out the cassette. I might just like figure out a way to get some uh, CDs done and then send her them with the unprinted sleeves and be like, hey, can you put the print on it and release the CD version of it too? Um, but the idea of having the second hidden disc inside between the the tray
oh
and
yeah,
case, putting a second CD hidden in there between two layers, where you're like, this is weirdly heavy. Why is this? Why is it rattling? You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. That's what I was gonna say.
I
You'd have to figure out a way to like just put a little strip of like styrofoam or something just right there to where it would keep the CD from going clack clack clack, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and then nobody would know. They'd just be like, yeah. But me, I'd be like, I have this CD that I just finished this week, which I mean, the recording is from a while ago, but it's funny nobody bought one, so I just didn't make them. But anyway, that's just me putting my L's right on the timeline. But anyway, um, so I finally finished the package for this because it's really labor intensive, and I've been working on it, and I'm just like, I'm being so anal retentive about every aspect of it. And it's got this thing where it's like, um, there's these semi-transparent sheets, and so I took the lyrics and I split them apart so they're kind of like fridge poetry. Like each part you could read separately, and like it works better sometimes than others. Like that's obviously probably always going to be the case unless you wrote them specifically to be split in the first place, which I did not. But anyway, the point is, so you have these semi-transparents and you have like a card stock that's like the master key, right? And you take these semi-transparent pages, which are out of order and they don't line up exactly like square to square and all this, and you put them over it so you can read the whole thing. And you're like, oh, or you can read them separately. And you're like, oh. Anyway, I go to my wife. I said, I really want to staple all three of these sheets together so that people have to take the staples out to like get this to work right. And she was like, do not fucking do that. You're so annoying. And I was like, yeah, I won't, but I really wanted to. I really wanted to just be like, you have to take this thing apart or else it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And I won't, but it was an idea. And yeah, I love that stuff. I think that, you know, uh, there are like, there are those labels that you hear every once in a while. They're usually noise labels where it's like they do the most absurd things with packages. Like I heard of a noise label where it was like one of the releases was um, they made the tapes and then they like actually like totally unspooled the tapes and put the tape in a bottle and like and put like other stuff in the bottle and then sealed the bottle up and they sold the bottles. And it's like if you wanted to listen to the tape, like you'd have to like put it back in the cassette shell and play it. And like I don't know if this was a thing where that's the only way you could listen to it. Like if it was me, that would be the only way you could listen to it because I'd just be annoying like that. But like um yeah, that's one of my whole things. It's like I just like think that people are not taking advantage of these formats in the way that's like super interesting like that, and I think that's so fun. Like so yeah, if from now until the end of time, anybody that listens to this is going to be looking through your CDs like where's the other CD or whatever. Um so that's fun. But yeah, so like the album just came out, like you said. There's tapes on Potato Cat. That's your pal Astor's label, and there may be some CDs at some point. There may be two CDs. Who knows? There may be seven. Um, but like you know, every time when an album just got released and I want to chat with somebody so you can tell people about it and you can get people to listen to it while it's like, brand new and like check this out. Um, it always feels a little bit like greedy or whatever to say, so what's next? But like when we get to the end of the conversation, that's kind of where you're at. So like what is next for the band? Are you all writing more songs? Like what's like are you like okay, now we're just going to do an EP, or like it's just like focusing on playing some shows now? Like what's in the pipeline?
Yeah, at this point, it's we are just trying to get out and get shows. And as I mentioned, it's being post transition name change kind of stuff is it's been a lot more difficult than it should be right now. So I feel like it's just that is the next phase. And that said, it's, I'm always like halfway working on a new song. Even when like the album was being mastered, I already had like three more songs that were half done, kind of thing. So I always have something in the pipe with that. But yeah, the next phase is just more shows, playing out more, trying to get the name out, trying to get the shows out. Because, the ultimate goal is to get back on the road. Because in my previous bands, like for Come Out Fighting, that was like the big ultimatum I gave to them right before I quit the band. Was that last year was we're either on the road at least 4 months this year or I'm out.
Oh my,
Um,
that's a lot.
After that, because I had just come from, I would play in this groove metal band called St. Ridley, where it was explicitly a tour band, right? They were on tours with like Smile Empty Soul, Filter, Cold Chamber, Fear Factory,
Oh dang.
um, uh, I want to say Combi Christ and stuff like that. So they were doing like really big stuff, and it was like really rad being on those. And it was like, so all we have to do is just start going. That's the trick. So, and it's not like weekenders like once or twice a year. It's full commitment or the whole like my arm tattoo. I have this really rad pirate sailing ship, and it has the text on it: "Abandon hope or abandon ship." And it is that mentality of abandon hope of having a normal life and having a uh, being at home for a reasonable period, or abandon, just quit because, at least for me, what the hell am I doing if I'm not? Because I'm a total tour dog. Like I just have to be on the road. And then after that, I was playing in the Cryptics from New Hampshire as their touring guitar player and touring bass player for a few years. And that was a pretty consistent, I mean, aside from 2020 through 2020, 2022 during the law of the lockdowns, when we couldn't, um, it was a pretty consistent thing for me until 2024.
Yeah, so you really just like the last few years it's like get this together and then is everyone that's in the band now is that where you're all at? Where it's just like we'll start we'll start playing like these shows and then we really just got to get out there. We got to get out there for a couple months or whatever.
Yeah, I think it was like me. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Cross. Uh, the big thing with this one is instead of doing like the big, 3 4 month tours like I was doing in Cryptics or national tours like St. Ridley, we come out where it was. We were heading out for a month and then 2 weeks home, then out for another month, kind of thing. Um, is this one's more focused on that genre? As I described it as fake emo. Um, as I think Astor referred to it as Vagrant Records Core. Um, uh, Nick's described it as Victory Records circa 2007. Um, and it's really that kind of eats, breathes, and succeeds by the Midwest. So it's going to be a lot more like Weekenders, but a lot more consistent Weekenders. Because all of that you can hit within a 2 day drive.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any shows booked right now that you can tell people about or
I do not. If anyone in the greater Midwest area would like to put Versus the City on a show, I would be happy to go out there. But no, it's been really pulling teeth. There are a handful of people who have put us up so far, and yeah, they're incredibly rad folks. Shout out to Voodoo House in Detroit and Ralph Power Booking with Ralph from Stack Deck and you know, uh, all the folks who played our release show with us and all that. But yeah, it's just need to keep reaching out, and hopefully people don't have to make myself in order to get more shows.
yeah. Well, I just referred a friend of mine to y'all earlier today, and I'm sure she'd love to bring y'all down to Indianapolis and um, at some point as well. Um, but yeah, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I try to keep these around an hour, and that's where we're at. Is there anything that you wanted to chat about that we didn't chat about?
Uh, I think we covered a lot of the points that you wanted to touch on. Just death before detransition, trans rights or trans fights.
And that was my conversation with Jade from Versus the City. Thank you so much, Jade, for taking the time to chat with me. Thanks to all of y'all for listening wherever you are as well. Don't forget to stop by patreon.com/humanmachine to check out what we've got going on over there. And until next time, take care and do good things.